trip to outer space.
Come along quietly or not.
You can have all the talent in the world and never get anywhere.
Some artists bait a hook and let you bite upon it.
And now, without further ado,
Coming to you loud and clear.
Okay, folks, welcome to another episode of Planet Shivers. I'm really excited to be sitting here today with drummer, artist, father, and great friend, Michael Lynn. Thanks for doing the show, Mike.
Oh, thanks so much for taking an interest in me in this regard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's jump right in. And what made you start doing visual art?
It's one of those things. I just have a sort of let's call it a Renaissance man approach to the arts in general, and I think that's not uncommon. I thought when I was younger I'd be an artist, and I used to do all sorts of, kind of non-professional art, and then you have art in school, and I think often they're trying to sort of say, okay, do something else. There's something that's going to make you a buck when you get. So I didn't pay much attention to it, and like some other things I've done, like in the area of just writing, it's the analogy that comes to mind. When I was just kind of, it would be the equivalent of just doodling, and in one case it was my telling a bedtime story to my kids, and then they really liked it. So I kind of would think about it a little bit more, and develop the story, and then it occurred to me, I got a children's story here, it's a real good story to tell a child at night, after 5 children, and I'm serious, it spans a long time, and so I committed it to writing. I found an illustrator who had experience with publishers and stuff, and also I know I'm a children's book author as well. Right. I think my interest. I have an interest in art, like I have an interest in sports. When I think about it, I would much prefer to do it, than observe it. Now, not to say that I don't enjoy going to museums and stuff like that, but it's just one of those things. And my mother was a collector of abstract art.
Okay.
Informally, and so my idea of art was always sort of just abstract. I never bought into the attitude that this is just like it's arbitrary. In terms of somebody just drawing paint, there seemed to me it seemed like art to me, and when I say that I mean the highest form of visual art. And it's just a great a catharsis, and indeed, my normal occupation at the time was so to the contrary. Right. It was hard, really yangish or something. Right. Whereas art, like children's short stories, appealed to that side of me, which was kind of drowning. It felt like, that's how I got into art, and I love doing it. I mean, it's more I love doing it than anything else. It's one of those things like people will talk about, and it's true in my case. I don't approach the canvas with any thought. Well, I have thoughts, but I don't have. It's not like I've got a finished product in mind. It just goes where it goes. And some people, and I know that with some authors, they'll talk about, serious authors will talk about just setting up the characters and then seeing where the characters that they've now created, where it goes, and that's basically what I do when I paint.
So was it the fact that now your mother collected abstract art, was that what kind of led you to do abstract work?
Yes, yeah, because, to my mind, and it's the abstract it spoke to me. But and you know, when I took art classes, and you know, and you're trying to do a vase or something like that,
Right.
there's something just about me and the way I approach by anything that I wasn't interested in like it. I was interested in photography, for instance. There, you want to capture an image,
Right.
And it may be a very precise image. You know, you really get on it or something like that. But for art, you know, my tendency would be if they give me one of those flower arrangements with a nice picture,
Right.
and I just you know quickly make the lines that kind of made one reminded of what that reality was without painting the reality. Now I always, like anybody else, I think you have a lot of admiration for people who can translate reality into the specific thing. That's not that's what you know. That's not abstract art.
Right.
But I never had I had no interest in trying to imitate reality. You know, it was more a matter of how, given the subject matter, at best. I mean, if I approached it like that, it impressed me. And then from there, it was more a matter of just the experiment I did was as a musician and a drummer. My experiment was to see if I could translate what I would do, and I did it to music. You know, what I would do as a drummer, if I could take the same sort of, instead of hitting a drum, if you put a paintbrush in my hand, and I could do that on the canvas, just kind of not on one spot, just spread it out. It had a sort of energy to it that some people liked. So it's even more. It's for me anyway. It's more. It isn't so much even, though I haven't experimented in every possibility. I've done some like 2-color stuff that works very well like that. Particularly particularly if I'm using oils, which will layer into each other. It'll get more complex. If it gets real complex, like I do it for too long, it becomes brown, as we all know. You get a 4th color. But prior to that, so when I do 2 colors, you can really kind of see a rhythm to it. Now, when it turns out to be when that rhythm manifests itself as a painting, it often will look something like you see in nature. You know, like the ocean. I have one that's dolphins. You know, I call it dolphins because I didn't realize it, but these things that were going like this, just a hand motion,
Right.
took a shape, just because you know how much pressure I may have applied. To thousands, literally, of dolphins jumping out of what appeared to be, since it was in blues, water. Now that painting is on display presently at a restaurant called the Cannery up in Wilkes-Barre. Now they're my daughter is a co-owner of the restaurant. They have various artists whose stuff they display, and she's a great fan of mine, my daughter, and I am of hers. But and I'm kind of proud of that one. And you know, they've turned out differently based on the colors, I guess I select, and they certainly don't look like one like the other.
Right. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That they're unique.
Oh, they are.
Each piece is unique. Because when I see an artist whose art all looks the same,
Right.
it gets boring.
It does. It
after
does.
a while.
Yeah. Oh, I was experimenting with. I mean, I have one that I gave another daughter of mine where I was using candle drippings. And I mean, it may be dangerous when you think of it on a panel. I mean, I sort of had a base of paint and without without chemicals, without using any, you know, even linseed oil to thin it. I just splotched the paint, and then I started dripping these candles of different colors. And it actually, you know, the first time I did it, and the only time, those little drippings took the identical shape really sort of throughout the painting, which is, I think, what is attractive to the eye. You know, there's some repetitive theme. It's almost like a beat. It's almost like being in, you know, sort of the groove of a musical piece, but in this case, a painting.
So, like, I often work visual art to music also.
Oh, yeah.
So I can totally relate to what you're saying.
Huh.
Do you find, like, is that something you do often? Paint to music?
It's funny. It's a good question. I would say it's been 20-something years now since I did my first of these kind of paintings. Mm-hmm. And I did it in this context. It was New Year's Eve. It was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. 3/4 of the people at this party were like asleep on the floor. It was in my place. And I realized that there's this time. It's just again my in me physically is my physical self. You know, if I get wound up, I'm not going to sleep. I like to call myself Mr. Inertia. You know, going. I don't want to stop. Mm-hmm. So I'm awake. Everybody is asleep. It's New Year's Eve. I'm ready to stay up until the morning. And what am I going to do with all that energy? You know, you can't make music. The band's all asleep, right. Literally, except my one friend at the time. And he was an artist, as a matter of fact. And I said to him, well, why don't we just paint, you know, and do stuff? And I have that stuff, you know, sort of readily available. So I did my first New Year's Eve painting. And then probably the second painting I did was the next New Year's Eve. You know, really that long. Wow. Because I was busily working as a lawyer and playing music, and the art thing was like New Year's Eve or sometimes for my birthday, and then I started like it would be January 6th or something like that, and I go, gee, that was fun. I'd like to do another one, so I just began to rattle them off, and I do them in spurts anyway, but at least one comes out of me a year on New Year's Eve. And it just seemed to me like the style of the painting, you know, kind of parallels the occasion. You know, I got the Happy New Year, and then everybody goes to sleep, and I'm still Happy New Year. You know?
So by what I got from, or one thing I got from this story is, so you were a drummer musician first.
I was a lawyer first. Oh, I'm sorry. You mean in terms of principal occupation?
Well. Either way, you know,
okay.
You picked up doing music prior to doing art.
Yes, and it's kind of a significant thing in terms of the relationship between the two because I was 6 years old, and at last I was going to school. You know, when it was my parents, I was a handful. Okay. But at the time they called me hyperactive, and I was hyperactive. I mean, my fingers are going like this all the time. My legs are constantly in motion, and I was constantly in motion. I was a head beater if I didn't get what I wanted, you know, literally. And a serious handful from a disciplinary standpoint. And that happened right from like the first day I went to public school. I'm literally in kindergarten, and I could not sit in my seat for the 45 minutes or so until they give you a break. Had nothing to need to do with the need to go to the bathroom. I just couldn't sit still. Even I was sitting still, I wasn't still. But then I'd just get up, you know. I mean, and then I also had a couple of the side factors where I interrupted constantly and blurted out constantly. That's all part of the same syndrome. So, everybody was supposed to raise their hand. It just came out of me. I was a great participator, but at the wrong time. So that it started becoming like a discipline problem. You know, they involved my parents and stuff like that. All those things combined. And so they sent me to a guidance counselor for the elementary school. It was the first time I saw it. And this guy said, well, give him a set of drumsticks. And I was and he can use this tap, 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 tap. When he's not sitting in class, I couldn't play drums in class. But it's literally, I was allowed to have a pad, drum pad, and it worked. And it worked at home too, because again, my mother used to make me run around the house. I swear, 10 times before I could come in the house. I go, Mom, I'm home. She goes, okay, bring your book, but 10 times around the house before I even walked in the house. Wow. It was that kind of stuff. And God forbid I was given any sugar or something like that. I mean, I was off the wall. I jumped off buildings, broke my legs. It was just all that kind of, let's say, kind of manic-y behavior. Mm-hmm. And then later on, they identified that to be, what they call ADHD, and hyperactivity, and it really worked well for me. The other aspects of it were because I was constantly running around when I got a little bit older, and there was still this issue of this behavior, this hyperactivity, which they were calling ADHD. I think it may have been the same guidance counselor who started saying, "Why don't we think of track?" And I went on in high school. I was first in my district, fifth in the state in the quarter mile, which is not an easy race, but I mean, you run until you fall down, literally. You just run as fast as you can. At least that's what I did, and I was able to extend it to the point that I could run a quarter mile, and so it was real good in terms of running. And then it was me later on who started thinking, well, I like to paint. You like to have, particularly in that, so much of what I was doing, like law, is abstract. I mean, you got it or you don't got it, but there's no end product that you can actually physically handle. Very often the case with music, but you can record.
Right.
But in terms of at least until I was practiced on, even at that, you win a case, you lose a case. You do a good job, you don't do a good job. There's a transcript, but nobody's really going to read it unless it's related to the case. But this was a tangible result of my effort, and for some reason I always felt that the result of what I did was not really fully appreciated, and so I wanted to have verification, and art appealed to me even in that regard, sort of psychologically. So I took I didn't even know it existed until I entered that one piece in the Bloomsburg Fair art show, right. and they looked at it and they go, it's abstract. I'm trying to remember the term. Abstract. It wasn't manic. Tactile. But it's it was abstract, kinetic.
Okay.
Art. Yeah, it was just kinetic. And apparently that's a recognized art.
Okay.
Form of being an artist. And then they started telling me about Pollock and stuff like that, who's
right.
And he used to, if you've seen a video of him painting, he's singing and dancing and throwing the paint, and his stuff really interested me. I mean, I've seen it in museums and the like, and I wasn't singing and dancing, but I was just basically, and I never just occurred to me now that you use two like drummers usually have two sticks in their hand. It was just a one hand sort of response to either the music that was playing or the music in my head. But what I try to do is generate as much speed as possible. And it's like a challenge with the stick as well. I can't even say it as fast as I can do it with my hand. And if I can get that into a pattern, and then take another color pattern and run through it, like it would be the equivalent of like a snare drum and this cymbal or smash, and that's really so it all really tied in to the drumming.
Right.
And for me, it literally the drumming was informal therapy. It was imposed on me.
Right.
And I found myself to be a pretty good drummer. In terms of being a kid and then growing up, it would be like sort of it was like the unwritten law that I could be who I was, and if I got some of that energy in a positive way, as opposed to just accomplishing nothing but except getting the energy out. Energy is always there. It would be appreciated by the school. I could get an A in art or something like that, but it had been art. In this case, it was music. But I was at the stage in my life, so the music's been constant throughout. Law school, it can almost be seen as the same thing, in terms of how fast can you think or talk.
Right.
And everybody from the time I was a little kid, I had terrible problems with just my ability to shut my mouth. I mean, there are kids, and they don't mean it. They don't mean anything by it. But when the teacher talks, you should shut up. I would be running my own separate little show over in the back, and I couldn't shut up. I couldn't stop smiling, which was a problem. I usually have a smile on my face, and if I'm embarrassed, like if the teacher was there, or anybody in authority were to yell or admonish me, I'd smile more. It was just I think it was like almost like your face getting flushed.
Right.
My response to being yelled at is to smile. That didn't work real well, you know.
Not in school.
Not in school. They took me. I swear, I would go right up to the teacher would take me out of the class by my ear, bring me to the vice principal's office, and I'd stand there like this, smiling. Wipe that smile. I mean, if I didn't hear that a million times, wipe that smile off your face. What's so funny, Mr. Lynn? I can't even. I couldn't get a word out. Boom! I'm already accelerated to the principal's office. And boom, over there, the guidance counselor. And the issue is, I smile, you know, like this. I think there's a song of that illegal. And it's, I mean, it was absurd, and I never meant anything offensive by it.
Right.
It was just a response. Nor obviously was I trying to offend by just my body moving, but it did, I think, work out to be, you know, once I accepted that that's what, or people accepted that who were in authority, that's where I was going to be. It wasn't hard to channel it into things that require that. And now, like, I'm 67 years old. It's funny. I'm obviously not as hyperkinetic as I was as a young man or a kid because I've gotten older. But usually you see, it seems to me, usually you see these older guys, and 7 years old or something, they're shuffling slowly. You know, they've slowed down to the point that they're slow. You know, I think that by the age of 100 or something like that, I may slow down to the point that I'm like normal. I'm still, there's no question, I'm still hyperactive. And I'm one of the older. I really am one of the oldest diagnosed. Since modern medicine recognized ADHD. I consider myself like the original ADHD kid. I mean, people they say they attribute to all sorts of people, Freud, many artists, in all fields. They said they were ADD, but there was nobody who was actually, you know, giving them that label back then. I don't think.
Right.
So properly channeled, it's a real good thing, and but the music was preceded, was the first thing that the experts laid on me, along with medicine.
Right. And did you, while you practiced law, did you drum also?
Yes, yeah, and yeah, it was a weird thing. I mean, because I couldn't do it, I couldn't drum as much as I wanted to. It really became a love affair for me. I really enjoy drumming, but it did have a sweet place in my heart because it felt anyway as if I didn't. There was something. If I had been rescued from being considered a disciplinary problem and a good kid drummer type thing. All of a sudden, I had evolved through somebody, very smart guidance counselor's observation. But the drumming, it doesn't go well with the law practice because, you know, in between the two, you had usually problems, and I had a very generalized practice. I graduated law school and went and taught for 5 years. And that went very well. It's another area where, you know, hyperactivity or whatever, people didn't fall asleep in class. I talk relatively quickly. I can be very dramatic if just naturally, and you're also, this whole ADD or ADHD phenomena is really a misnomer because it's not attention deficit disorder. It's just the ability. The disorder has to do with the ability to separate what's important and relevant from everything else. You know, so and I've had all sorts of testing on that. It's really very interesting. But drumming and art, those two things in particular, or, you know, the visual arts, to me is you can literally get lost. And I mean, focus just on that, and that's that's when I feel best. You know, I'm lost. I'm not even, in the case of drumming in particular, there have been occasions where I'm listening to myself play, and then I'm not even drumming. I mean, I'm not even there. I'm sort of just the observer, and I just love that. And it has happened with art too, where it's just almost as if I can say now the piece is ahead of me. You know, it's not. I'm trying to catch up. You know, no, it's not just just aimlessly marking up a canvas. Well, I think somehow, I don't know why. I don't know if anybody else relates the two. I mean, I think not, or I should say, anybody else's experience has been that. Certainly, a lot of people who are into the arts, like our musicians and visual artists, like Joni Mitchell, who's a great visual artist and was a great singer. And then you see that a lot, you know, and they may not talk about it because they're so known for their music or they're so known for their art. But like Woody Allen, you know, was a great, very good saxophonist, you know, and he did that just on the side. So there may be a tie-in, but I
think that there is. Like, I seen two examples that come to my mind are Zappa, who did visual art.
Oh, there you go.
Very few people know that he did visual art.
I've heard of that, though, yeah.
And Jerry Garcia.
Right. I've never seen, yeah, that's amazing stuff.
I went to a Further show in Wilkes-Barre.
Yeah, so did I.
And we might have been at the same one.
Probably.
Do you remember which one it was?
Yeah, it was. Well, I know where it was at that Civic Center or whatever they have.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many nights were they there? Was it more than one?
I'm not sure how many nights. It was in November that I remember it being.
What year? It was a while ago, man.
Yeah, for me it was a while ago, but not that long. No.
I think there was a Further show, and it was in a large place in Wilkes-Barre. And the funny thing was, it was the first time I'd gone to many Grateful Dead shows,
right?
But never with one of my children. Yeah.
Okay.
But she had my daughter was working at the time for a radio station, and they had one of those private booths, you know, where they serve you food,
right? You know,
and drink, and you have. When I say private, I mean it's at least cut off from the rest of it. They're not cut off from the sound. Cool. But it was a nice view, and you know, people at a Grateful Dead concert, you know, tend to imbibe.
Yeah.
And so I was, and she was, and I remember at one point I was like freaking her out. Oh, yeah. You know, I don't know if it was specifically that, but it was input overload. I'm here with my father, and I'm so scared. It was just to see my daughter in that position. But you're saying at that concert, did you see some of Jerry's stuff?
Well, there's a hotel or a motel near that venue.
Right.
That
I know that they were staying at it.
They had a small exhibit.
Oh,
in one of
really?
the rooms of this hotel.
Wow.
So you would go in, and it wasn't a very big room. It wasn't really a room much bigger than this. And you just, all along the walls was Jerry's art.
See, I've never seen it. I bought ties, you know.
Right.
But
yeah, and like they had some of the more the more rare ties there too.
Oh, did they?
And all of it was framed. It was really nice. Some of it was just pencil drawing. Some of it was painting, be it watercolor or whatever. It was really interesting.
Wait, I'm kind of. Was there a relationship? I mean, could you tell? Did it come out of the mind of Jerry Garcia, or was it shocking that it came out of Jerry Garcia? I'm trying to.
I put it this way: is like if I didn't know,
yeah,
I wouldn't have known.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Why would you?
It wasn't like psychedelic
it wasn't.
or anything like that. It seemed like it was very purpeful. Like he sat down to draw what he was going to draw, and he did it. When
you think about it, I mean, his art. He was at the very. Many people feel he was certainly amongst the best or highest quality lead guitarists, and maybe singer. Songwriting, I think, was left to the other individuals. That's my dog you hear.
Oh yeah, no, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't too close to my foot.
He's snoring. He finds this really an interesting discussion we're having. So it makes sense. I mean, Jerry to be as good as you know, at playing guitar, he was a master, and it would seem that maybe so that that's somehow his body's response to seeing. That's a visual, and the other would be his ear,
right?
And so it wouldn't make. And when you think about it, though it was in a psychedelic setting, it was real and tangible. You know, yeah, by contrast to what would probably be my style, drumming in and of itself, that does not have the same. I mean, there's beat, there's rhythm, and there's and I learned how to read the music and stuff like that. And that's one thing where somebody hands you a sheet and you got to play this, but I'm not sure that drumming it can be. I think it can be and done well in a very unstructured way, which some of the Grateful Dead stuff really showing. But I don't know about lead guitar being unstructured. I think he's pretty precise, or else it wouldn't sound right. So you can just go anywhere you want to, And but what was the subject matter of his art?
The subject matter is it was a lot of landscapes, like pencil drawings or colored pencil drawings of landscapes.
But kind of precise, or
precise, yet they were very minimalist too. Like you knew what you were looking at, but it was interesting. I liked it because of that minimalism of it.
Right.
It was a white canvas or a white piece of paper.
Right.
That he used colors, but it was again very precise and within that minimalism you knew exactly.
Right.
Oh, that's a street corner. And
did he do any ocean related topics?
Because
I know here they said he was a deep sea diver kind of as a hobby.
I imagine that he did. I can't recall every piece though.
I've never seen any of it. I don't know where is it available. I mean, even beyond buying an original, which I imagine it's very expensive.
I'm sure there are pieces that you could you could look at online.
I'm sure there.
But I haven't seen them anywhere else. For that particular tour, or that for that particular branch of the tour, that collection of his art was following that.
Oh,
tour.
now that I think about it, he further was after Jerry died.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was and it was all his art, just his art.
Yeah.
Huh. Because I honestly couldn't understand. I have since I somehow accumulated a fair collection of Jerry Garcia ties. And I mean, they're calling it Jerry Garcia ties. And I'm thinking, well, I'm not sure I understand. Then I understood it was a foundation set up by some relative, daughter or ex-wife or something. Okay. But a tie and a painting are two separate things.
Right.
So I'm thinking, he certainly wasn't wearing a tie.
Right.
I doubt very much he made these ties, or he made something to be a tie. So he must be taking something that he, at best, created visually and put it on a tie.
Right.
But those ties are fairly abstract.
Yeah.
I mean, and maybe he was designing for a tie. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that either.
Yeah, but his artwork wasn't that. I mean, but without really, he had there are so many. There must be at least 100 collections of sub collections, so to speak, of Jerry Garcia ties.
Right.
Something like music, art, drum. There's a whole one of drums.
Okay.
And some of them you can tell that just repetitive drums.
Right.
Some of them, you got to look real close. You got to look real hard to see what he's talking about. Mm-hmm. But in the abstract area, it's just phenomenal stuff, on a tie.
Right.
But I've never seen where it came from. And
I'm not sure. He may have been designing them.
He really may have.
Double check that.
I mean, but for the most part, they came out after his demise.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I know it had something to do with his family. It's hard to me imagine him doing ties. I mean, tie a certain tie, but it is a nice. I mean, I don't know if he did those. It's something to look into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a couple too. Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're great. I started going on eBay and specifically searching those ties, and actually I found there was a guy I had bought. He bought drums from me, and somehow he was just he loved the drums he bought, and he responded back and was telling me about his stage in life, and he was at a stage in life where he had just retired. He had been a broadcaster on TV, apparently a well-known one, and he mentioned that I should check out some of the things he's selling, amongst which were his entire tie collection. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, his entire tie collection, he was selling his ties. They were $1 each, right? But they were Jerry Garcia, a whole bunch of Jerry Garcia ones. Mm. They had Beatles ones, be
Oh, wow.
the real actual
Yeah.
endorsed. And then Whoopi Goldberg. There's
wow.
the whole line of Whoopi, and the Beatles ones were cartoonish, and they were all, and I think they were a tribute more, because they sort of it was like a cartoon in that, I mean, like a visual cartoon or in a magazine, where they were, they'd have little squares, and then inside it there would be a story. So the one would be whatever song it was, Help, let's say, was one of them, and they'd be like, help over here, and that sort of stuff. Whereas Whoopi Goldberg, they were all in black and white, and it was very, very sparse and stick figurish,
Okay.
But they were real Whoopi Goldberg. Now Jerry Garcia, I mean, the number, I had no idea until I started really getting into those that there are collections and then numbers, so that it could be collection 33, which is, let's say, music,
Right.
subsection drums, number 37. I mean, there are a lot of varieties of stuff out there. Yeah, I mean, there's some that I think may be more I guess there's some real truly rare ones. I just collect pezzes in that regard. It's really has no relationship to anything other than that. I like the whole concept of Renaissance man,
Right.
or bohemian, the idea that you don't have to be structured. You don't have to limit yourself to one activity as your occupation. That's who
Right.
you are. It would be very hard to define in one word, and anybody who knows himself.
Right.
And I think I had the same difficulty. I mean, like you said when you introduced me. I mean, I'm a father, and I just even think one of the thoughts I've had is, as long as you can go 3 adjectives deep, at least now you're starting to flesh out. But one of the problems with our society is, and I don't mean society, with human beings in general, is when you get down to one word, it's usually something like nigger, what I mean, or Jew, or hateful.
Right.
So, and what's happening is you've completely stripped the person of their humanity.
Yeah.
With one word, just
Yeah.
one, faggot, that sort of thing. And people who hate see things that way. One word,
Yeah. Exactly.
one word and dismissed.
Yeah.
And if you say, again, it's 2 words. You can say talented faggot or something like that. At least you're giving the guy a break.
Right.
Or good-looking nigger. Or something. That's 3, I guess. But if you get 3 descriptions, now it's at least you can tell the guy is engaging in some cerebral matter when he's not just a pure moron, who literally sees things in a unidimensional
Right.
way. I don't think, I don't see how you can be, a bigot if you just expand the territory and
Right.
actually take and
Because
well-rounded.
then you're looking past that one.
Right,
That one
right.
thing.
It isn't just one thing, right?
Right.
And so it just falls into the overall. Like the first word out of your mouth when you see that person isn't going to be some insult.
Right.
You can't do it with 3, 4. I mean, you could if just 3, 4, but you're still talking about the same thing, right? Come all sorts of things to that one thing, and ignore the fact that he may be a great drummer, or he might be a great artist. So it seems that it's the same philosophy I have about people, really, or about what a person can or should be. To explore all of the very enjoyable aspects of having a large brain, and by that I mean bigger than horses and stuff.
Right.
I mean, not bigger than horses, and a lot of gray matter, and do the things that human beings do that other animals really, for the most part, don't. Though I did see, and I think it was for real, but it's either a pig or a cow that does abstract art. I swear to God, it was.
Oh, wow.
Did you ever see that?
No.
Yeah. And it appeared to be. I think it is for real. And so what they do is they go into it was a cow, I believe.
Okay.
Might have been, I think it was a cow who seemed to have, I don't know how they discovered it, but just it was very, very artful in her way of being a cow.
Okay.
And but somehow it may have been trained. I don't know. But this animal, it was a common barnyard animal, and it wasn't like it wasn't like it was clearly something that someone who had a pet cow or pig set out to allow them to do or just see what they would do. And this animal, had just a paintbrush in his mouth, and you could see was focusing, would step back, dip back in,
Right.
Look around, thin it a little bit, take another poke. It was just,
Wow.
yeah.
I've seen that with an elephant.
Really?
Once, yeah.
Really?
A few times.
Really?
I don't know if it was the same elephant, but
An elephant.
it would do it like pick the brush up in its
Oh
trunk
wow, no.
and just like take swipes
That's
at the canvas.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how did it look? I mean, the cow started where the cow or pig, whatever.
Yeah,
That was
didn't look bad.
I mean, I guess you can only express. I mean, that's an interesting thing with that elephant with their large trunks and stuff like that. Because I know they're pretty nimble with that.
Yeah.
They do all sorts of stuff, including eating, drinking, and that. But I never would have applied to art.
Well, an interesting, which I just thought of this, but it's an interesting concept, is, and we were talking about your abstract art, like, so abstract art, I guess at its best, could be just instinctual.
Right. Well, that's what That's what I'm doing. I mean, it's a
Right.
body. It feels anyway as if it's just it's expressing who I am in neurologically.
Right. So, and in terms
At
of
its best, I'm saying at its best. That may not even be at its best. I mean, I don't know if a person who has real training and real eye and thinks in terms of abstract art, that just means, I guess, that you're not attempting to simulate anything outside of what you're doing on the painting, which is great freedom, as opposed to trying to do like realism,
Right.
But is there something in between? When I say abstract art, I mean it doesn't look like anything.
Right.
You can look into it and see a lot of things.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. Is there something like I guess there is like Monet or even.
There's like expressionism and there's abstract realism and things in between.
Because it would seem to be there would be.
Yeah.
And I always found that really fascinating. I have a painting I picked up off the internet, and it was just some guy putting up his painting, but he used a precise, or I shouldn't say precise, but a repeated stroke to draw what was a stewardess inside an airplane, giving cocktails to the people that were flying.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, so if you looked at it up close, it just looked like a jumble of paint. If you step back maybe 10 feet, you could see that all that jumbo looking a little bit like. And I do that with things like trees. Mm-hmm. I think the one on the wall that's on the right was supposed to be that's my the right bottom. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't have much light on it. It's a little dark, but it's supposed to be flowers,
Oh,
And so-
like you say that.
Yeah.
I can see like a stem and
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
That's just one of the things I'm most known to do. Like or a tree. Like you might see a little like a realistic trunk here,
Right.
and then it's just a matter of taking that pattern. And now that was what I had in mind. There is, the standard, like those yellow little flowers that have a center that's brown, and then you just go like this, and
yeah, like a sunflower.
Yeah, or sunflower would be a great example. Daffodil. I mean, it's not too hard. Or tulip. I did one on tulips that my sister has, and it's very interesting. She lives in Cherry Hill. She has a very nice house. Mm-hmm. She handpicks everything she puts up, and it's mostly modern. So in her bathroom, which had hues of red in it, this painting I did, which other than in her bathroom, I mean, I'm just saying, so it wasn't like a latrine type bathroom,
Right.
and it wasn't getting water on it or anything like that. But in a very sort of prominent place, the tulip painting, which I thought was a failure, because it was such a dark, it was just basically black and red, so it was very dark. But I was able to somehow get a tulip out of one of these brushes get a tulip stroke, just 3 or 4, and then like a tiny little thing coming down here, but more just to look like just a group of tulips, and it stands out. I swear to God, it stands out as if it's a piece of art. You know what I mean? It just properly framed. It seemed it would bring out the color. It looked like it was a serious attempt at doing tulips. That was a weird thing. I mean, I've never sat down to do anything abstract real. It's just I had to have something in mind. And I do that every once in a while. I have a few, like I said, with the dolphins. And that's the one that's at my daughter's restaurant. I mean, it's her restaurant. She owns it with someone else, and they're just starting to put up. She has quite a bit, like I said, she has art on display, and this one that I had given her as a gift, the dolphins. I saw you say dolphins. That's why I said dolphins. After I painted it, I wasn't thinking anything. I was just doing blue and white. Then I started thinking blue and white ocean. But the whole thing, you normally don't see an ocean painting with dolphins where the whole thing is, ocean basically. It's consistent, and somehow jumping out of it. When I went to this stroke, it really looks like dolphins jumping out of the ocean, but from a sort of like an airplane perspective, where you'd be looking down.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And it's funny. I don't know that I can respect that, but like for instance, the old seagull. Where you paint a seagull or the sun. Where people go. I mean, and you can tell that's the sun, even though they're taking 3 seconds to do it. Seagulls flying used to be a big one. I feel around. I do remember at one point in my life where, and this is such a common thing, Man magazine. Yeah. They'd have these creatures. It would seem to me, just an exaggerated expression of some monster-like looking thing. And I don't know why, and I don't know if it's just my generation or if this continues, but every guy I knew, was doodling monsters, and some were really good at it. Matter of fact, I knew people that went on to do their own, cartoons. And I had this one that I would just do and do and do, and even he was abstract. And then I remember getting interested in things like crystals, so I would do it was just a road painting where you do like a bow tie in the center. Right. Then you do a triangle coming up, piece through it, triangle coming down, piece through it, same thing over here. And then just keep repeating that pattern. And it looked like something when you were done. And then from there, I just relaxed those patterns. But that would be, I'd like to do something like that again. It was almost like a diamond ring, it would look like. But it had a center. And are there any of these things that have that kind of helix?
Yeah, that'd be cool.
It would, yeah.
It would be really cool.
Maybe that'll be my next one. I've done pine trees.
Okay.
I mean, and that was a really big one. Probably 6 by 6 feet or something like that. And as I was doing it, I'm thinking. All I was trying to do is think pine. What a pine, in my head. What a pine, and then somehow hope that it's going to coordinate to my hand. No slowness at all, but it's right. And sort of like playing the song of a pine tree or pine trees. And I really thought it was a failure. I mean, because I'm standing right up to it, and it just looked like strokes. Right. But then when you step back from it, I mean, if you walked into a room and you saw the thing over there, it'd have to be a big room. It'd have to be some distance away. But it really looked like pine trees in a forest. It was the strangest thing. Like it may have something to do with vision. If you have real good vision, it doesn't. When you look at pine trees, that's not what you're seeing. But I guess if you had sort of, if your vision was clouded or something like that, or let's say you're looking through a lens that is, out of focus, it's almost, then you can tell it's pine trees. Right. But you couldn't, if you described it, you couldn't describe it because it's like what shape is the cone. I can't tell. It's just that sort of spot of color. I did those, and I've done other. There been a bunch of trees, where again it's like this fallout, and there's a stroke of the color is what I kind of see from an artistic standpoint, and then I'll draw some maybe interesting clouds. I think that stuff has shape, and that's why I try to stay within the parameters of some degree of realism, but not really real.
Gotcha. And you were also, you mentioned to me that you were in the Bloomsburg Fair, one of your pieces was in the Bloomsburg Fair.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
That was Bloomsburg Fair is the largest, as I recall, the largest agricultural, so to speak, fair in east of the Mississippi. They have some large ones out west, but it's a monster. It's attended by between 100,000. I think it's 100,000 a day are attending the fair, and they have. I forget how many acres. It's hundreds of acres of land right at the Susquehanna River that's the Bloomsburg Fairgrounds that is used 1 week a year. Talking about luxury, it's hundreds of acres, all these buildings and stuff. Now some of the buildings they sometimes now host other things. They have NASCAR. They're not racing there, but they have people. They have the auto shows and that kind of sort of stuff. But for the most part, it's just for the Bloomsburg Fair, and it was an agricultural fair. So one of the bigger aspects of it is, particularly for the community, is you can enter baked goods, you can enter apples you grow, and they have. I mean, it's the amount of what humans are capable of producing is really ridiculous. I mean, it's a whole spectrum. They have buildings full of animals, and then somebody wants to get the first prize in a chicken or something.
Right.
But it's since I lived there 30 years, and in those 30 years, that fair began transitioning into something slightly more cosmopolitan. Mm-hmm. And as it did, they always had people who could bring in their paintings and have it judged. But every year there were more and more. I mean, when I entered that one, it was the second time I'd entered. I entered one before, it's been as I expected. That I think it may have gotten an honorable mention, but it certainly wasn't a winner. And I mean, you'd stand online for an hour with just lines as long as you can see with your art stuff. It didn't have to be abstract art. And then they'd have these tables you go over to, and if you're abstract, you go over here, and they hang all the abstract stuff, in this particular line. And there were just hundreds of, fascinating, if not fabulous, paintings, big, small. And I remember when I bought the one and it took first place, which meant you got a ribbon, some money, but it was negligible. Mm-hmm. Just basic bragging rights. And then, of course, every day in the local paper, they'd have a listing of the winners and stuff, and everybody's paying attention to that. Yeah, you just look for a name you kind of recognize, and then it's sort of like Facebook or something. But yeah, when I brought it in, the first thing the woman did, which was where I thought I'm just entering it, they got, like I said, hundreds of them. She says, that's a nice frame for that piece. She said it was dirty, it had a little hand dirt on. So she very meticulously used the cotton ball and said. And she's treating it like something. I had a frame put on it, but I never saw it as something. She was gingerly, like it's a piece of art. And then when she hung it, she where to hang it, type of thing. Mm-hmm. And they have, they're not knocking the nails into the wall, but they have a sort of pegboard system that's adjustable. Gotcha. And I remember her taking all. She even said to me, "Let me show you where I had your piece." And she just loved it. She just loved it. And I didn't know I don't know if she was a judge or not. I don't think so. I don't think the judges are handling the entries. But so then the fun part is the fair goes on, and then toward the end of the fair, so your item is on display for a week. Okay. Because the fair goes for a week, as are your animals, if you're with animals. Mm-hmm. And which means a tremendous commitment on behalf of those people. Like the kids are sleeping with their animals, big 4-H, all that kind of stuff. And then at the night before the end of the fair, like Christmas Eve, but it would be like that. The night before the day, it would be the last day of the fair. All the judges' results come in, and they may be judging throughout the week. And they have I forget X number of judges, and they really are serious. Their job they take very seriously. I remember talking about, since I had won a first place entry, maybe I could be a judge, and it's like, no, you have to have. There was certain qualifications. Right. It was mostly from the college. It was right there. They're taking the art department, but it was beyond that. for the life of me, I honestly can't see. As I was looking at the paintings, I'm thinking, this is a foolish thing to do. I mean, it'd be sort of like a guitarist, let's say me playing guitar next to Jimi Hendrix or something like that. I don't even play guitar,
Right.
and I don't really consider myself an artist, visual artist. But that experience bolstered my confidence greatly.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So it gives us some credibility. And I really, and that one I still have just because I wanted that, Other than that, they've been pretty disposable. I've given them as gifts to two of my children for their weddings, and those were really the one I did for my son. Because there's no rules. I took champagne glasses and got a tool where I could cut them in half, all different kinds of champagne glasses, and so beyond the actual paint, which was very thick, and very bright colors, mostly yellows and stuff, I was able to glue in the champagne glass, the half of a champagne glass, which could even be this way cut, but for the most part, it was cutting along of the glass,
right,
and stick it up there, which made a sort of strange optical thing on a very long, relatively thin material frame, and it really was kind of how I felt about it. It was getting very it was like they were would appear to be. I was thinking champagne, popping out of the bottle, after you put the cork in, and they have that hung up in their house front center, and then I did a regular old abstract because I thought that may have been a little much, and I wasn't sure I was going to hold together, but it's held together. They got two children now, it's still together, and I did one for my when my daughter got married. I did one where they had which combined written like a poem that I didn't write, but it was fond of. In the center of it, amongst this bunch of paint, which again, so I don't even know if I can call that my own painting. If I copy somebody's poem and then stick it in the center of something, it's still painting.
Right.
I mean, I could do that, but I certainly there's nothing artistic about the handwriting or anything like that. I did take calligraphy, a calligraphy course, and now. You've probably seen some of what people do, particularly in the Orient or various, I don't know if it's Japan or where they do calligraphy with a brush. I mean, they do have to spell words and stuff.
Right.
It seems to me there's just possibilities there of a configuration of calligraphy in its most loose sense and abstract kinetic art. But I haven't explored it yet. But there's really, what amazed me was there's even such a category. I thought nobody taught me, nor I doubt very much that there's a course anywhere on, where you say, okay, here's your selection, you're an art major. Let's see, should I take abstract kinetic or realism? That doesn't exist, I don't think. But somebody I showed, they'd seen a painting of mine, and they said, oh, kinetic, abstract kinetic art. And I said, really? and it does. I've never really explored that, other than knowing that one artist who dances and throws paint, whose results often resemble.
Yeah, Pollock.
Pollock.
Yeah.
That painting that was my mother's. Now she worshipped that painting. That was front center. And I remember thinking, I don't even know if it's painted on canvas. I think it may be slate or something because it's very heavy, and you get the feeling I get the feeling anyway. Not so much that has it really is. The paint that what's drawn on it looks like it was drawn on a piece of slate that size, as opposed to cut out of a bigger piece. But I know that I've seen examples of people who do these. They have this huge bunch of. I don't think it's framed yet. Just have canvas up,
right?
Throw whatever the paint on it, and then cut out a piece of it, and that's a painting.
Right.
I've never done that. I mean, but it does make a mess. My paint. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I have one painting. It was part of a pair, that I gave to another one of my daughters as a gift on her wedding.
Right.
And did I hear somebody come in?
Maybe.
Hey, man.
Oh, hey, how's it going?
How you doing?
Good, man. What's up?
Good. I'm being interviewed. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't mind. Join right in.
What up, gents?
You want to say glass behind you, buddy?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no problem. I thought the last idea is a whole other thing. It's a new concept of mine.
Okay.
Yeah. So, like I wanted. It occurred to me I have no idea what I look like. So I figured by that I mean when you look in the mirror, whether you know it or not, subconsciously you're kind of looking at yourself in a certain way, but you don't really see what you look like as you interact. So I thought I could have that thing over there, have a mirror here, and then every once in a while take a peek. I'm curious. I mean, it's a big thing. I've talked to some women, and I forget what they call it, where they have a misconception about their body. They think they're fat, and they're actually skinny, so they starve themselves. And part of their training, that's what I heard about it, is to actually get mirrors where you can see you're really not fat. You can eat. You should eat a little bit.
Yeah.
In my case, it's probably the opposite will be the conclusion.
So you want to do like a self-portrait?
Just for my own sake, to see what it is. I'm not going to paint it.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah.
Let's go. Oh, is this a mirror experiment going on?
It is.
Nice.
I have a couple of those that I picked out of somebody's trash, that's all it was. But you see how they're etched? They're actually etched if you put your finger on it.
Oh, yeah.
I think. Can you feel it?
It's under glass, I think. But
Or is it maybe it's on the other side or something. I forget.
It's very nice. Very.
Yeah, it's got a matter of fact, you might call that, it's not kinetic abstract art. It's a bit abstract. It's like abstract realism.
Yeah, it is.
Or even at that, I don't think anything looks just like that.
No.
Or maybe it's upside down.
Yeah, this is the first time I'm hearing that term.
Oh, really?
Kinetic
Yeah,
abstract
sure.
art.
I never heard it. I'd love to see if that is. I mean, for it to be a term, there has to be. I would assume that term was in existence, came into existence completely separate of me, and it certainly fits. But it wasn't. I wasn't trying to imitate, or had never even heard of. I remember, I forget who it was that did. There was Cubism, for instance.
Yeah.
Right, and then there's these guys who did stuff with dots.
Right.
I don't know if that was part of Cubism, but it was in the same region or the same time period. But I never heard of anybody, be they drummer or not, who was trying to put on a canvas what was happening, what they felt neurologically. It'd be interesting, seriously, if you were epileptic, to put that paper, just grab the guy's arm. I think that's certainly kinetic.
Right.
It's involuntary. It wouldn't be a nice thought, or maybe, there's possibilities. But from a drummer standpoint, it just seemed to me a natural. And there is, not so much in a small painting, but in the larger ones, you can sort of feel a rhythm. I mean, because I think, I don't know, but I think it's fair to say that if you take a brush stroke, you do it real fast. And that's not what I do. I do repetitive. But if you just real quick, as opposed to, it looks different.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But I don't think you're going to know as precisely. This would be where you're getting a precise result, and here you just whatever it turns out to look like, which is what I was doing.
Right.
And sometimes I'd have a thought in mind. It would be to the music, not a particular song, but I put on jazz.
Okay.
I
I draw to jazz too. So,
yeah. And your stuff is more obviously realistic. But how did I see it? It's impressionistic too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the kinetic, it makes sense because kinetic energy is energy passing from one thing through something else to another.
Right.
So in a sense, you have you're the energy passing through the brush
exactly
to the canvas.
It does make sense.
So it does. Yeah.
It's the term. And as soon as I heard it, I thought, wow, I'm actually doing something. It's not doodling clearly.
Right.
It's not doodling, and I'm not throwing paint. I mean, there's some intent there. So it's abstract. All right, it fits into that category, but I think it's on the far end of abstract. I mean, is there something more less real than abstract? Because I mean, there's varieties. I've seen abstract art, at least at the fair, the competition. There were some things that would be like, it would vaguely resemble, let's say, a horse. That's a big picture, but it was so like, let's say Picasso. That's something different, right? That's not really, that's cubism or something, right?
Well, I mean, Picasso would be a level of abstract.
I guess because it doesn't look,
right.
it's distorted kind of. That's the way I look at it. But within the frame, within the subsets of his piece, there is some realism. I mean,
Right.
You can, it may not look. The horse may have 5 legs or something,
Right.
and one may be over here,
Right.
but still it looks like a leg.
Uh-huh.
Sort of crudely like a leg too. I've never fully.
Yeah,
Understood.
even his humans
Yeah,
painted
yeah.
were.
Well, some of that stuff's interesting. Where he'll take a face, and the one eye's looking this way, and the other one's going over here, just by the slant on it. Escher, something like that. It's obviously not real. It's almost a play on the eye.
Right.
But it must be. That's very realistic, though. Escher. What do they call it? Would that be?
That could be like, abstract and surrealism
Photo
mingle.
surrealism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go.
Maybe.
No, but and so I guess so what it would seem to me that if you're doing realism, right, that requires a degree of precision, formula, and you need to take what you see and you're trying to do it exactly, which would be a very slow, arduous. It's got to be process, and then in terms of tone of skin and stuff like that, you really have to be a master at that stuff, whereas. If anything is masterful about anything I've ever painted, it's been uncanny. You know what I mean? I thought it was kind of a unique way to paint. I used to paint also on drum heads.
Okay.
But then that's the end of the drum head. You can't.
Right.
And it would be shown the drum head that the part of the head that you'd hit would be where the painting is.
Right.
So you couldn't, if you put it on a drum,
Right.
it would just be all over the place. I still have some of those, and I thought that was unique, but I've seen it by others. It's not unique painting a drum head. I mean, and some are realistic, but kinetic art, that does make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was also thinking neurological, but if you did a subset, but I don't know. Kinetic is good enough, and it is. You're the energy source,
Right.
and it's through your arm. This thing. The only thing that is you're choosing really is the colors and the kind of the general motion. But beyond that, honest to God, it's just like it's always. I've never slowed it down I've never. They're never done slow, and they take time. And they take a lot of until I'm done. That's why some of them, as I went along, are very, very thick. And that's what I like about oils. Now they take forever to dry. I mean, forever. One I had for 9 months before it was like even tack dry. So you could, literally paint's falling off the thing. But I mean, I think, I've learned, but I don't remember the names. There's a way of what you put on the canvas first.
Right.
Like somebody told me.
Gesso?
Yeah, gesso.
Yeah.
And then something you can do even at the end to begin to allow that oil to harden. And people have said to me, my paintings that don't have gesso on it, which is most of them, and that don't have a hardener on it, it'll probably have a 30-year lifespan, and then they're going to start cracking and stuff,
Okay.
which is, I'm sure, very true. I mean, that was the very first one I ever did on the left,
Okay.
which is complete. I mean, I chose, dark. Like I said,
Right.
the tulip thing was much darker than the tulip. You could barely see it, but in her bright, modern bathroom,
Right.
mirrors and stuff like that, I swear it looks like you could sell. I mean, it would be like if it would be a product, a tulip. People like tulips. It's just tulip after tulip, and somehow they look like tulips. And although I was thinking tulip, it was fast. I mean, now you've seen. I mean, I've seen that artwork, and I guess is that called abstract? If you do, like, these people that do these 20-minute paintings,
Oh yeah.
You know, like
Depends on what they're painting, I guess.
well, let's say it's a landscape. You ever remember that guy?
Oh,
yeah.
Bob Ross.
Yeah, Bob
yeah.
Ross would be the best example. I mean, he over the course of a show, all of a sudden it really looks like a landscape.
Yeah, it's Bob Ross. That's my mother took a class from him,
Oh, really?
and I have like a painting of hers from that class, which I'm glad I've been able to
Really?
hold on to. Yeah,
Wow.
and it's oil and it's like wooded, like
Yeah.
mountains, evergreen trees,
Right.
like nature. You know?
Yeah, I mean, but I remember watching the show and trying going along with him. Now, it didn't look as good as his did. I
Right.
mean, but a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Yeah.
And but he would take it would depend on the type of brush. I'm gonna have all sorts of fun with this. Because I'm thinking
That's a good thick brush.
I'm thinking more like it's got to be great, you know. And then as long as I keep the colors, I have a big palette. 'Cause
Right.
I didn't know anything about 4 colors in brown, but I swear to God, I've had paintings that they were great. I'm running around all excited, and then I go, well, maybe if I had some red, and then every place I touch turns brown. It's like, is that true that the combination of 4 colors
yeah.
turns into brown? Period.
For the most part, yeah.
If you do it all at the
especially
same time.
the colors, yeah.
Yeah. That's I learned that lesson. I try to keep. Honestly, it works best for me with 2.
If you keep going, you get that weird, like murky gray.
Grayish greenish.
Yeah, grayish green. It looks like
Yeah,
sewer.
Yeah, it really does. And I've ruined paintings. You know, I should have just left them alone. Now, the hardest thing for me is to do that. Like, you know, so I mean, I would take sometimes a whole bottle and just, you know, and then take that and swirl it in. But yeah, I like depth and dimension, you know, and physically on a painting.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, honey, how you doing?
Oh, wow.
Come on in.
I'm fantastic. How about you?
Just great.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Hi. Hey, Isaac.
Hey, what's up?
How you doing?
Good.
Hello. Hi, how are you?
You guys know each other? Albert?
Hi, nice seeing you again as
Yeah.
well. How you gentlemen doing?
Good.
Good.
Good. We've been interviewing me for too long.
It's all right. I'm doing wonderful.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Yeah, I see you're packing heat. Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Wow. Oh, shit. She did that to me yesterday, too. That's not funny.